There are countless stories from all different persuasions that contain within them kings, princes, beautiful maidens, demons, ghouls, giants, wise old women, sages, etc., etc. And a great number of these stories are allegories. And that means to say that every character in these stories is an aspect of our self or our psyche. So let's see what this particular story brings up for us. It's the story of a very great king who ruled over a vast and prosperous kingdom. And he had an only daughter who he adored above all else. She was the most beautiful creature in all of that kingdom and all of those realms that were present on the earth at this time. She was loved and revered not only by her father, but all who knew her. Now she'd come to marriageable age, and so her father, the king, was seeking a suitable husband for her. But all those who presented themselves were found to be unworthy. But when one was sent away, another 3 took their place. But it so happened that this king began to have a dream that became a nightmare. He dreamt that his beloved daughter was going to be married to his slave, who was not only of the Hebrew faith, but he was an old man. He was more than 90 years old. Even though he was a giant of a man and as strong as an ox, how could it be that this man could be wedded to his beloved daughter? So not knowing what to do with this, the king being in a great state of being perplexed, consulted his wise men, his advisors, who said to him that he should send his slave, who was called Samuel, on a quest to find the great Saint Moses. And when he found him, that he should give him a riddle. And this riddle was that it is known that a garden fits into the world, but how does the world fit in to a garden? Now all the king's advisors, when they got together, they laughed at their cleverness, at how they could think up this riddle that was obviously unsolvable. But so it happened that Samuel, the giant of a slave, was sent off on his quest. Now when he set out, he knew that he was being banished, exiled, and that in fact his quest was nigh on impossible, because Moses was no longer amongst the living. How could he find this great sage and saint? But he was given this task by his king, so he set out, and he traveled far and wide. Even with his vast strength and his vast abilities, he grew weary, bone weary, spirit weary. And one day he came to rest under a giant tree. And just as he was about to fall off into sleep, a whispering voice spoke to him. And he looked around to see where this voice was coming on, thinking that it might be some discarnate spirit. But when he asked, "Who are you who's speaking to me?" the voice said, "I am the tree under which you sit. Where are you going?" And Samuel answered that he was going to find Moses. And the tree said, "Please, when you see Moses, will you ask him a question? Why is it that I have never borne fruit, a fruit that would be able to sate people's hunger when they came to sit beneath me?" And Samuel undertook to fulfill this task, and arising the next morning somewhat refreshed, he went and continued his quest, taking him to far, far distant places. But again, tired, deathly tired, thirsty and hungry, Samuel found himself at the top of a hill, and when he looked down, there in the valley below, he could see a clearing, and he thought, maybe that's a stream from which I can drink. So he descended the hill, but what he found were two pools lined with marble, one lined with black marble containing a murky, muddy water, and the other a pure white pool of white marble with clear water that had a distinct and horrible smell, so that when you came near you wouldn't dare to drink from it. Now Samuel was very perturbed by this. He was thirsty, but he couldn't drink from the muddy water, and he couldn't drink from the clear water. So he sat beside these pools, wondering. And then again a voice spoke. And he said, Who is this that speaks to me?" And the voice said, "I am the voice of the ponds. Where are you going?" Samuel answered that he was going on a quest to find Moses. And the voice said, "Please, please, would you ask Moses, why is it that we, the waters of the world, are undrinkable? How is it that we cannot slake the thirst of those who come to us?" "Yes," said Samuel, "I will ask Moses." So he went on his way, still thirsty, tired, hungry, weary to his bones. But finally he came to a high mountain. He knew that he had to ascend this mountain. So with fatigue dragging at his giant legs, he climbed, but tired, he lay down to sleep. He slept for 3 days and 3 nights. And when he awoke, instead of finding the sun shining on his face, he found himself under what seemed to be a great shadow. And when he looked up, he saw that this great shadow was a being. But when he looked, he saw that although it appeared to his mind's eye like a great shadow, it was in fact a shining being, a being of great light. And he asked with great reverence, "Who are you?" And the great being answered, "It is the one you have been seeking. Don't you recognize me?" So Samuel fell on his knees in front of the great Saint Moses. And he said to Moses, "I have come with a riddle and several questions also." And he said, first of all, "What is it that when a garden fits into the world, how is it that the world can fit into a garden?" "Oh," said the great Moses, "one of your faith should know the answer to this, because is it not said that the world is God's garden?" Then Samuel asked, "I've been asked by a great tree, why is it that it cannot bear fruit?" And Moses said, "This tree is chosen not for it to bear fruit, to give food for those who come, but its leaves, when they are plucked and made into a tincture, can heal all ailments." And then Samuel asked Moses, "And there are 2 ponds, one of black marble filled with murky water, and the other pure white marble, but its water undrinkable." And Moses said, "Yes, again, this water is not to quench the thirst of those who come, but whoever comes and immerses themselves in the muddy water and then bathes in the clear water will be returned to vitality and youth." Now Samuel took leave after many salutations of Moses, and he set out to return to the king. Amazing as it might seem, the great distance that he had traversed took him only 7 days and 7 nights to return. But when he entered the gates of the city, he found everyone in great sadness, wearing black. And when he inquired, he found that the princess, the daughter of the king, had taken to her bed with a deathly illness from which she had not arisen. Now Samuel knew, because in traversing those 7 days and 7 nights, he visited again the ponds and immersed himself in the muddy waters and the clear waters, and was returned to remarkable and vital youth. And in visiting the tree, he plucked its leaves, knowing that they could be put to good use. So he went and presented himself at the palace. Of course, no one recognized him. He was brought into the presence of the king and said, "I can cure your daughter." And of course, we know that he did. Asking for a brazier, a kettle, he boiled the leaves that he had gathered, and even the aroma that arose from its vapors caused the princess to flutter her eyes. And when she was given the elixir, she was returned herself to full health. We know the end of this story, as these stories go, because the king recognized the great qualities of Samuel, not only being thankful for his restoring his beloved daughter to health. The riddle was solved. And of course, when the king died, Samuel and his bride took over the kingdom. What is it that arises for you as a vital crux, point of this story? In other stories, we have those levels of stories. The stories where it has a teaching or a moral. That story where it has sacred symbols. And that level of the stories where it has a unifying thread. Maybe it's the king, maybe it's the princess. But in this story, when we take it in as a whole, when all of the parts, all of the elements that are part of ourselves come together as this story, what is it that arises for you as its point, as a vital point? Not the character, not the storyline, not the moral, but the essence. What's the essence of this story for you?
For me, what just came up is nothing is impossible.
Okay, nothing is impossible. And doesn't it arise out of all of these characters coming together in us? The king, the beautiful maiden, the sage, the saints. What happens when it all meets in us? Nothing is impossible. What is it for you, though?
He had a purpose,
You had
and he thought that purpose was impossible, but he went on anyway.
yes.
And he was showing the way and given the gift of fulfilling that purpose.
Right.
Because he had faith. And he just kept on going.
So what's the essence behind of that? The king playing his part, sending the slave on the quest, so forth and so on. What's behind it? What's behind us? Not only that brings all of these elements, aspects of ourselves together, the demons and the princesses and the ghouls.
It's kind of a higher knowing, because the king actually thought he was doing something different, but it worked out.
Absolutely right.
The way it
Absolutely right. Yes.
That we have everything we need.
We have.
We have everything we need
Yes.
inside of us.
Inside of us. Yes.
We are everything, including the reflection, including the people we send, including everything. Might be a part of ourselves that doesn't want to do something, but we're capable of
Doing it anyway.
So
Yes.
it's all there.
Yes.
It's all here. It's all there.
Right.
So it's the oneness kind of thing.
Yes.
The whole oneness, merging kind of.
The inner and the outer and all of that. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Can we sum it up? We can, can't we? And this is our quest to sum it up in ourselves.